Hello and welcome to this budgeting, reforecasting, and reporting scenario planning webinar. Amanda here from marketing, and I'm joined by Mike and AJ from Solver. And Solver is a leading corporate performance management software provider. And I'll add, this year, Microchannel was honoured enough to attain their elite partnership status. So that's fantastic. And handing over to Mike, he's going to share his valuable tips and insights on performance management software. So handing over to you, Mike, to run us through the agenda.
All right, well, thank you. Today, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the Solver product. I know that the focus is mostly about reforecasting and scenario planning for Dynamics and SAP. But I also want to make sure that everybody, for those of you that haven't seen the product before, you have somewhat of a general idea of how the reporting and budgeting tool works within the Solver product. So I'm going to start today's session by just showing you, a little bit about the reporting side of it. I'll show you a little bit of generic budgeting. Then I'll get into the specifics related to reforecasting and scenario planning. Then I'm going to wind this all up by showing you, first I'll show you a financial report. I'll go through the reforecasting process, and then I'm going to show you a financial report that shows those revised scenarios or those revised forecasts. So bear with me. We'll start out, it's going to be a little bit generic, but we'll get to the heart of things, and then we'll put it all together at the end. So with that, I'm going to skip through. Like I said, Amanda's going to make this presentation available for most of you, so you can dive into the details, but I'm going to skip through kind of the reporting slide, the budgeting slide, and the Power BI slide. You can dive into this later. Want to focus on the key things that we'll be talking about today. And before I really get into the product demonstration, I want to focus on this one slide because it's going to help everybody understand how the Solver product comes together. This is really the architecture of the way that the system works. So Solver's a CPM tool. For those of you that don't know, it's a corporate performance management. It's a cloud-based tool. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to take any of the data sources that you have across your organization. And we don't care, what type of data source that is. It can be a cloud data source, it can be on-premise. It doesn't really matter to us. And it also doesn't really matter to us what the data source is. We can bring all of that data into our data warehouse. So we have a group of generic connectors that allows us to bring that data in, but we also have some specific connectors that are built for the SAP B1 product, as well as the Dynamics product family. So very easy to set up that integration to bring your ERP data in. And then of course, if you want to bring in any other data source, you can use either another pre-built connector or a generic connector to do that. So once all that data is in the data warehouse, and this is really the foundation of everything within the Solver environment, now you have the ability to report off of that data. You can plan, do your budgets and forecasts off that data, and then of course be able to do dashboards. Now, Solver doesn't do dashboards. We use Power BI for our dashboard solution. And what we do is we have a pre-built integration. It's the only CPM tool that has a Microsoft certified app. You'll find it in the app source on the Microsoft app source page. And what that allows is for all of that data in the data warehouse to come through the secure connector to be able to create dashboards within Power BI. So all the Power BI functionality and the things that you do is standard, but you've now got all of that data. So if you're contributing to budgets and forecasts and that data is being stored in our data warehouse, it's now available for you to do dashboards. And our data warehouse does a lot more than just store data. It's got a full currency engine in it. It allows you to build hierarchical trees for reporting purposes. It does consolidation. So if you've got multiple companies, it'll do eliminations and all that as well automatically, or you can do manual adjustments as well. Last point to talk about, you're in an industry and you're wondering, does Solver work for my industry? We don't work any better in one type of industry versus another. We really do, work the same across all industries. And we have customers in just about every industry that you can imagine. And this is just a small sample of some of those companies. So with that, I am going to get right into the demonstration. So I'm going to start off, again, like I said, just showing you some generic stuff, kind of how the Solver product works. So what I have here is, this is my reporting environment. If you see, if I scroll down, you can see I've got lots of reports, right? I've got hundreds of reports, and I can virtually build reports, and these are snapshots, by the way. If I actually want to run the report, you can see if I hover over it, it'll have a run button or a play button. As long as I have the data, and keep in mind that data warehouse will grab all that data from across my organization. As long as I have that data in the data warehouse, I can build any kind of report that I can dream up. Now, the only part you can see here on the left-hand side that I'm all 100% in the cloud, I'm in a web-based environment. The only part of this solution that happens outside of the web is when we go to build reports or build budget templates. We are an Excel add-in, so all of that design capability, all of the design capability is inside of Excel. So everything you know and love about Excel, the formatting, the design, all the formulas that you do, all of that will exist within the Solver environment. You virtually don't lose any of the Excel functionality that you use today when you come into the Solver environment. So you build it in Excel, all your data is in Excel. It allows you to bring that data, I should say data, what I mean by data is all your fields, all your dimensions are in Excel. So it allows you to filter all of that data and then build those reports and then bring them back into the web environment very easily. I'm not going to show that today, just wanted to talk to you about that. Happy to show it to you during another session. But for today, I'm just going to kind of talk about reports after they've been built. So what you're also able to do is create categories as a user. So you can see I've got a lot of different categories. I can create them on the fly. Maybe I have a particular reporting process that I want to follow. So I could say step 1, 2, 3, and 4. Or maybe you want to just create a favorites group like I did here. So I'm in Mike's reports. Of course, I can search and filter throughout the reports as well. I'm in Mike's reports, and I'm going to start with this one P&L today. And I'm going to come back to this report a little bit later, but it's going to be a different version of it. And I'll explain to you what I mean by that. I'm going to close this down, just resize things a little bit. So you can see that you can add Excel graphs into any report, but I just collapsed it. So when you first look at this report, the first thing that's evident to you is that this report was built in Excel. It has the Excel graph capabilities, which I mentioned. If I were to go down and expand, I've got all these expansion groups from Excel. So if I wanted to expand my admin categories, I could kind of drill into the information a little bit more as well. Throughout the reports, you can always drill into the categories. So if I went into product revenue, for example, and I right click, I can see all of the general ledger details. So all the transactions that make up that number. I can then hop right back into the report. And if I wanted to go in here, you can see that I also added AR drill to. So if I wanted to see the sales numbers that made up or the sales that made up that number, I could also do that as well. So all of this is all about how you design the report. So you design the reports the way that you would like them to look. So that kind of sets the tone for everything that we're doing today. If at any point in time you see a report or a budget template that you don't necessarily like the look of, no problem. You can change it. You can design them the way that you want. It's all about, dreaming it up in Excel and making sure that you have all of that data, okay? So you'll also notice on this report, because I said I'm going to come back to it a little bit later, that I have my budget column here. So I'm looking at actuals, I'm looking at prior year, I'm looking at a variance by dollar amount as well as by percentage. I have my budget data here, but we all know now that my budget's probably no longer accurate. I'm either on the plus side or on the minus side of that budget in today's current economic situation. So I'm going to adjust these numbers, and I'm going to show you that in the same report, but I'm going to add in a forecast, and I'll talk to you about that a little bit more as we go. And then you can also see the variance by percentage and dollar amount related to the budget. And year-to-date information, if I wanted to put in individual periods and have those individual periods collapse throughout the remainder of the year, I could do that as well. At any point in time, if I wanted to comment on a particular report, I can just come in here and say I can build an unlimited number of comment templates. So here, for example, I built this one that says management comment templates. And you can tell that I built this in Excel. It probably took me a total of about 5 minutes. But if I wanted to go in and enter in any comments and any of these fields related to this report, I could do that. And then I could just say save. And those comments would now be available for the remainder of this report. So the lifetime of this report. So if anybody runs this report and goes back to look at the comments, you'll see that those comments will stay with this company during this period for the life of the system. Okay. At any point in time, if I wanted to share this report, I can share this with other users. So you can see if I said I wanted to share this with AJ or Archie, I can do that on the fly. I don't have to worry about their user credentials because that's all been set up when you initially set up the system. So what they can see and what they can't see, it won't matter. That was already set up at the beginning of the implementation. Okay, so that's kind of the high-level overview. I'm not going to get into exporting to Excel. I can guarantee you that it will do that with all the auto formatting and formulations. And I won't get into editing today, but I'm certainly happy to do that one-off sessions for people that dive a little bit deeper into the product demonstration. So just a couple of other things that we can do within reporting. There's also what we call our archive reporting user. And what that allows me to do is a lot of different things. A is I can create playlists. So if I had a particular board presentation or any type of presentation that I wanted to show, I can put a group of reports into a playlist. So I can select these individual reports if I wanted to and run them, but I could also just say, show me the playlist. So once I do this, what you'll see is that I now have, that's an internet warning there, sorry about that. So that I now have pop-ups with all the different reports that I can select on. And I can just hover over the different reports and review these. So this is a great way of passing out report books to the different executive members or management team. So this one particular report is a narrative report. So it's automatically creating a narrative for me, but it's also a report book in itself. So you'll see that I have a P&L variance here. I have a sales report, payments, maybe payments to my vendors. I can add any kind of report on the fly to any type of a report book. So very powerful there. So when you talk about doing things like reforecasting and scenarios and going back and running reports, a lot of times you're going to want to do comparisons. So one way to do this in Archive is that if I wanted to look at a previous period and I didn't necessarily have that column within the report, I could run the report for the same company during different periods, or I could run it if I've got multiple companies. I can select reports, and then I can run those reports side by side and do a comparison. Okay. Now this is the over/under view. I don't particularly care for that, so I'm going to change to the side by side. But here you can see this is the same report that I ran for the US, and I ran it also for Singapore. So I can actually scroll through here and drill down and look at all the information, but I can do side-by-side comparisons of reports. Now these are financial reports, these are P&Ls, but these could be, any type of report. Salespeople, your customers, could be projects, any type of reports that you build, you could do the side-by-side comparisons. So with that, I'm gonna kind of skip over to just a generic overview of budgeting, because I could spend a lot of time just on reporting alone. I'm going to give you two scenarios. So you see that I have a budgeting module here, but I also have assignments here. So quickly, what that means is that assignments would be somebody who's a contributor within the organization. So you send out an assignment. So this is Mike's assignment. I'm going to open up my assignment. You can see that I have one that I've started, that I haven't started, excuse me, one that's in progress, and then two that I need to approve because I'm also an approver. So I just open up my budget. And in this role, I'm not creating anything. I'm not modifying anything other than my budget numbers. So you can see that I've already entered in a bunch of numbers, and I'd saved it, but I haven't completed my assignment, right? If I complete it, means I can't come back and change it. So I've saved the data, but I want to go in and make some changes. So if I said, for example, travel, I wanted to make this 4,000. You know, if I'm an Excel user, I'm going to be pretty familiar with the ability to drag this across the remainder of the year, right? So that was the only thing that I needed to do, was just put it in at the account level. You know, fantastic, I would be done. But we all know that it doesn't work quite that easily. So if I wanted to drill a little bit deeper and provide a little bit more information, and I can actually expand this view so everybody can see a little bit more. I can also, as a user, I can come in here and you know, raise this bar up or lower it if I want to see a bigger view of my budget data. But essentially what you see is I'm on that 63010 travel. You can see my main line account line up here, but you can also see it down here as well. So maybe I want to just make this really simple. I want to enter in an amount. I didn't want the 48,000. I just wanted to do 42,000. And I'd like to be able to distribute that using one of my rules. And here you can see I've got a lot of different rules. These are easily defined, but I'm going to go ahead and just keep this at even, and I'm going to spread that, and it will spread that to $3,500 evenly across all of the periods. Maybe I would want to go in and adjust this based on a previous year's budget. So if I went in and said, let's just adjust this by the 2019 budget, I also have the ability here to offset periods. So if I said I wanted to offset a period, you can see that I just did that. So it offset it two periods. Maybe those periods were, you know, somehow they were different and I didn't want to use those in my adjustment. Then I could go in and say, let's adjust this by 15%. You can see I'm using percent, but if I had a units-based budget, I could also do units. So then I just say adjust, and it will adjust that budget 15% over last year's budget. Okay. At any point in time, if I wanted to enter in line item detail, I could do that. But I'll just show you one that's already got it, just in consideration of time. So I went up here to gifts and donations, and if I scroll down, you'll see that I've got a number of vendors. It's very easy just to go and start entering in new vendors. At any point throughout this process, I can add comments. So if I wanted to add comments all the way down to the line item detail level, I could do that. And you'll also notice that when I select a cell, it automatically pops up the spreading method that I last used. Doesn't mean I have to use it. I could easily enter in a number, and it's just that easy to go and do the contribution. So if I wanted to put in line item comments, I could do that here. And you will see that realistically through, you know, throughout the system. You know, add comments just about everywhere. Okay. The other thing that you can do is you can add instructions or directions. These are demo instructions, but these could easily be step-by-step instructions or policies and procedures for your different contributors to fill out when they're completing their budget. And then again, you can always have actual information or forecast information if you wanted to reference back to that throughout this process. And then we also have an activity log. So if you wanted to send comments over or information over to the person that's approving your budget, you could do that as well. And that's stored again along with the system, along with the budget, excuse me. So that's budgeting kind of on a generic level with respect to how it's done with assignments or your contributors. So now we're going to kind of talk a little bit about you know, what the heart of everything is today with the reforecasting. So before I go into budgeting, I'm going to go into the data warehouse. So I'm leaving. That means I'm just not saving my data. Now, you don't need to be worried when I say data warehouse. Nobody has to write any code. It's very user-friendly. It's very intuitive. And the only reason that I'm coming into the data warehouse is just to show you that I'm making copies of an existing budget to create scenarios. So this is where all my data is, right? So everything's modularized. Everything's pretty easy to understand. So I'm going to go into scenarios. Now I've already copied these just in consideration with time, but here's my budget. So I copied this budget, and I don't need to copy paste like you would in Excel. I can just make a copy of a budget and create a scenario, and then I can name it whatever I want. So I can have as many versions of that budget as I'd like. So what I've done here is I've created what if scenario number 1 and what if scenario number 2. One's a best case scenario and one's a worst case scenario. Okay, follow along, you get it. You could create as many of these as you want. So if I go into budgeting, again, budgeting works kind of the same way. So if I unclick Mike's budgets, you'll see that I have all of my different budget templates that are in here, right? But here again, I'm going to go into kind of the favorites. These are the two templates that I'm going to be demonstrating today. So I've got a what if analysis or a breakback budget that I'm going to talk about first. I'm going to give you a couple of different ways that you can do this. There's many, but I'm going to give you a couple of different ways that you can create budget scenarios and reforecast. So parameters, all this means for anyone that's wondering, I'm going to collapse it, but it just means that I've run different scenarios for different periods. It remembers all the parameters that I've run in the past. So here I could go through and I could say I want to change change my company, and I can filter those companies on the fly. But if I had selected it, it would remember it. So I don't need to go and open this up. I can click it; it'll automatically rerun the parameter. What you'll notice here is that I have a forecast version. So I've now got 2 forecast versions, what if 1 and what if 2, right? And you can still see that I can go back to my budget version that's in here. So I've created those different versions, and now I have this breakback that will allow me to reforecast the remainder of the year by simply filling in a couple of fields, right? I can get as detailed as I want. I can go down to the line item or the line level, account level if I want, but there's several different ways to do this. Now, this particular template is driven by net income. So you can design different templates to work different ways, but I'll go in and enter my desired net income of $1 million, and you can see that all of those gray fields just populated. So it's populated the remainder of my forecast based on the formulations that were in here and based on this desired net income. But I can also go in and look at the expenses, and I can make adjustments by department. So if I said I wanted to minus the administration department 5%, I could do that. That would make those adjustments automatically as well. And then I could also make adjustments by the accounting group. So if I said revenue is going to be 2% adjustment, again, I could do these either negatively or positively. So if I enter in that 2%, you'll see now that it's made that adjustment here, and it's revised my what if scenario. I could also come into the line item and I can say, look, product revenue, that's going to remain flat, but our services revenue is going to be plus 5%. And then a different type of services revenue might be, minus 2%, however I wanted to do that. And again, oops, we'll like that on there. Go to other revenue, minus 2%, a little fast on the keyboard. So minus 2%, and it's readjusting all of those numbers accordingly, okay? And then the net income is, you see all the adjustments, 5%. Hopefully everyone can see that I'm kind of flying through. I'll go back. You can see that 5% adjustment in admin. And then if I scroll down to the bottom here, you'll be able to see that it revised the net income for this template, okay? So that's one way of doing it, and I'm giving you the very short version here with a half hour's time. But I'm going to give you another alternative to this as well. And again, I can save this data, but I'm going to go ahead and exit out. Again, I'm going to leave this data. So an alternative way to do this is you can make a global change to a budget or a forecast, right? So here you can see that I have my what if scenario that's in here, okay? I have the ability to go and do I'll expand this as well. I have the ability to go in here and just make a global change. So I'm looking at actuals for multiple years, actuals and forecasts. Here's my what if scenario from the changes that I'd made. And again, all that data is stored back to the data warehouse. And then I can go through and just say, I'd like to make a global change of -5%, right? So you'll see that that variance has been revised, and that that proposed forecast has also now been revised. Now I could also go through and get into the more of the nitty gritty. I could go in and I can say I just expanded sales and marketing. So if I scroll up here and you see the captions, I could go in. These could be department comments, so they can go and add new comments in. I could then come as a manager and add new comments anywhere within the template, and of course all of these comments are going to be available for reporting. So if I add comments in here and you run a report, you'll be able to see all of this information. Now I could also do an adjustment here by a percentage, a proposed change by a percentage or a dollar amount. So if I said 5% in the change there, or maybe I went into salary and I said that's going to be -2%. Nobody wants to hear me minusing salary, but sorry, dollars. I'm going to minus 200, let's just say, more of a realistic scenario. And you can see that the numbers are adjusting along the way. Okay. So just an alternative way to go through and do some reforecasting, and then again, I can save this budget or this forecast and move on. So to kind of try to tie this all together in the allotted 30 minutes, I'm going to go back into my reports, because now we've made the adjustments and we'd like to report on those adjustments. And you can see this was the first report that I ran, the R106 P&L analysis. Now I have an R107 P&L forecast analysis, which is the same report, but I've made an adjustment, couple of modifications. Okay, so the first modification is that I've added the scenario in here, so I can choose which scenario. So you can see that both of those scenarios that I've created are now available to run this report on. And the other thing that you'll notice is that I no longer have the budget in here in this column. I now have what if scenario number 1. Now, if I change this to what if scenario number 2 and I reran this report, it would bring back all of the numbers in that scenario. So, however you want to build the reports and you want to be able to reforecast or do different information, change the information, it's very easy then to go back and report on all of that information, including any of the comments that would have been inside of a report as well. So that's my 30 minutes. I know it was short, and I would be absolutely happy to do more detailed demonstrations for anyone who is interested and would like to do that, and that can be arranged through Microchannel.